Welcome to Theology Made. I'm Jordan. You've heard the phrase, probably said it, the right side of history. Everyone uses it, politicians, activists, corporations, churches. Sounds great, makes sense, but no one ever explains it. And here's the strange thing. That phrase only makes sense if the Bible is true, and almost no one notices. When someone says the right side of history, they're assuming three things. History has a direction, history has a moral standard, and history will eventually judge us. And that feels obvious to most of us. But it shouldn't, because for most of human history, no one believed this. In the ancient world, history wasn't going anywhere. It was something you endured, not a story with a hopeful destination. And most cultures understood time in one of two basic ways. The first was cycles, that history repeats. Civilizations rise, they fracture, they fall, then it all starts again. And this way of thinking, it shows up all over the ancient world. In Hindu thought, time moved through endless ages, where creation, decay, destruction, and rebirth, they repeat without end. Nothing's finally healed, nothing is permanently fixed. And Greek thinkers weren't far off. Heraclitus saw reality as constant motion, everything changing, nothing lasting. You never step in the same river twice. Plato treated time as a shadow of something eternal, not a path towards fulfillment. And even the Stoics believed the universe would burn itself down and start over, repeating the same events again and again. History in this view has no moral direction. It just turns like a wheel. You don't reach an end. You just keep going. Second is decline. That history was a long slide downward. The Greeks talked openly about a lost golden age. One of their thinkers described humanity moving from gold to silver to bronze to iron, each stage worse than the one before it. The present wasn't progress, it was proof that things had gone wrong. Roman writers, they shared a similar thought. As Rome grew more powerful, they believed it grew more corrupt, that wealth weakened virtue, success bred decay. History didn't make people better, it exposed how easily they broke. And so across the ancient world, the assumption was the same. The past was pure, the present compromised, and the future looked bleak. You couldn't fix history. At best, you could slow the collapse. And what this means is that whether history was seen as repetition or decline, it never arrived anywhere. There was no right side of history, no final judgment, no moment where justice finally wins. History either goes in circles or drifts downward. Wisdom meant learning how to live inside that pattern, but not expecting the pattern to change. And that was the world people assumed they lived in, which is why the later claim that history actually moves forward, that it has meaning, direction, and a final reckoning didn't feel obvious or natural. The Bible introduced something radically different. History is linear, it has a beginning, it's going somewhere, and it has an end. In the beginning means time itself is created, not eternal, not cyclical. History isn't a loop, it's a story. And from the start, in Genesis, Scripture moves forward through promise. God speaks, and generations live towards fulfillment, creation, fall, redemption, restoration. The meaning of events isn't found by looking backwards to some golden age, but forward to what God has said he will do. The prophets don't preach nostalgia. They don't preach returning to the past. They preach expectation. Justice is coming. Restoration is coming. Resurrection is coming. The future, not the past, carries the weight. And at the end of the story, history isn't remembered by the winners. It's judged. Not by empires, not by power, not by those who wrote the headlines, but by God. And that's where the idea of a right side of history comes from. Not from progress, but from judgment. And when someone says, I want to be on the right side of history, they're really saying history will evaluate us. Actions will be weighed, justice will be revealed. But that's not a scientific belief, nor is it a neutral belief. It's an eschatological belief. It assumes a future reckoning. And that assumption didn't come from Enlightenment philosophy. It came from the Bible. And so modern culture quietly replaced judgment with progress. And so instead of asking whether something is right, we often ask whether it's new. We assume that time itself does the moral work for us, that newer means better, later means wiser. The future by default is morally superior to the past. It's the chronological snobbery that C.S. Lewis talked about. But that assumption doesn't hold. Progress explains how things change. It doesn't explain why they're good. Technology can accelerate and ethics erode. We can learn how to do more without learning how to be better. And history is full of innovation paired with moral collapse. The 20th century alone gave us electricity, antibiotics, mass communication, alongside genocide, nuclear war, and industrialized death. Advancements didn't prevent cruelty. In many cases, it made it more efficient. And that exposes the problem. Progress has direction, but no destination. It moves, but it doesn't judge. It can tell you what comes next, but not what ought to come next. For history to bend towards good, something outside of history has to define what good actually is. Otherwise, the future isn't better because it's right. It's better simply because it won. The phrase only works if justice is real. If history has no final justice, then the right side of history is meaningless. It's just majority opinion. Whoever wins, whoever writes the textbooks at the end. Without ultimate judgment, there's no right side, only the loudest and strongest side. And the phrase secretly assumes that injustice will not get the last word. And that assumption is biblical. Now, even people who reject Christianity still talk like the Bible is right about time. They believe injustice should be exposed, evil should be named, and history should mean something. They want moral accountability without a moral accountant. And so the language stays even when the theology fades. And this isn't about mocking anyone. You don't have to be a Christian to want to be on the right side of history. But historically, that idea only exists because Christianity taught the world that history matters. Justice is coming, truth will be revealed, and power doesn't get the final word. That can't be defended through secular optimism, but it can be shown in biblical hope.